start off with the metabolism of xenobiotics, and then we're going to shift to page. This is very short, just like last time. I think I have only done 20 slides for each, but we will have a 25-item exam on Tuesday. I won't send the blueprint anymore, and no study guide anymore. Okay? So your xenobiotic is a compound that is foreign to the body, and the principal classes of your xenobiotics has different medical relevance depending on drugs, chemical carcinogens, those that occur as compounds in your plants, foods, and various compounds that have found their way into the environment. Most of these compounds are subject to metabolism, mainly in the liver. So they're generally considered to be in the process of detoxification. Sometimes the metabolites of your compounds are inert or harmless or biologically active. They are desirable, as in the activation of a prodrug to the active compound, or may be undesirable, which means there are formation of your carcinogens or mutated part of the inert precursors. Phase 1 metabolism will render compounds more reactive, introduces groups that can be conjugated with your glucuronic acid, your sulfate, acetate, glutathione, or your amino acids. Your very hydrophobic bonds would persist in your adipose tissues, most indefinitely. So there are cases where in your phase 1 metabolic reactions will convert the xenobiotics from inactive to biologically active compounds. So the main reaction involved in your phase 1 metabolism is going to be hydroxylation. This is catalyzed by your family of your enzymes called your monooxygenases or your cytochrome P450. 57 cytochrome P450 genes in the human genome were found out to be the key enzyme. So it's named because it was originally discovered when it was noted that preparations of your microsomes, so these are fragments of your endoplasmic reticulum, have chemically reduced and were exposed to carbon monoxide that exhibited the absorption peak under 450 nm. So 50% of your common drugs that the humans ingest are metabolized into isoforms of cytochrome P450. So there's a large number of your isoforms of your cytochrome P450 that have been discovered, although 150 in a wide range of your organisms that includes your bacteria already. It is important to know that a systematic nomenclature for your enzymes and your genes. So this is based on your amino acid sequence of your enzymes. And the abbreviated root symbol CYP will denote your cytochrome P450. So it's followed by an Arabic numeral designating the family. And then your cytochrome P450 are included in the same family where they exhibit 40% or more amino acid sequence identity. The Arabic number is then followed by a capital letter. So it indicates the subfamily. And then in the subfamily, they exhibit greater than 55% sequence identity. So they are then assigned to Arabic numerals in their subfamily. So if, for example, your CYP181 will denote a cytochrome P450 that is a member of family 1, subfamily A, and is the first individual member of the subfamily. So this is an example or your table that contains the families of your cytochrome P450 in your human tissues. You don't need to memorize them, but it's good to know and go over the list. I might. Naturally occurring compounds in the foods may also affect cytochrome P450. So your grapefruit will contain a variety of your furofumarins, which inhibit your cytochrome P450. So in effect, the metabolism of your many drugs are also affected. So the grapefruit will reduce their activity and others inactivated because the grapefruit increases the cytochrome P450 activity. Drugs that are affected will include your statins, your omeprazole, your antihistamines, your benzodiazepines, antidepressants. There are also polymorphisms of your cytochrome P450 that explains variations of your drug responses noted among many patients. There have been reports that individuals with null alleles have impaired metabolism of nicotine and are apparently protected against becoming tobacco-dependent smokers. While these individuals smoke less, their blood and brain concentration of nicotine remain elevated longer than those with individuals with wild-type allele. Okay, just go over this list. I'm not going to ask anything about it. So your reactions will prepare your xenobiotics for excretion in phase 2 of their metabolism. So glucuronidation of bilirubin, you'll be able to go over that in chapter 31. Your xenobiotics are glucurinated in the same way with your UDP. That is catalyzed for a variety of your glucuryl transferases. So these are present in your endoplasmic reticulum and in your cytosol. Molecules of such, for example, your 2-acetylaminofluorine, which is a carcinogen, your aniline, your benzoic acid, memprobamine, your phenol, and your many of your steroids are excreted in your glucurinates. So they are attached to oxygen, nitrogen, or sulfur groups of the substance 6. So they are probably the most frequently conjugated reaction. Sulfation, like your alcohols, arylamines, your phenols are sulfated. So the donor will be other biologic and sulfation reactions. So there's going to be steroids, like glycans, glycolipids, glycoproteins, which are so-called active sulfates. Okay, so sorry for the tiny font. So your tripeptide glutathione, this is important in your phase 2 metabolism of your electrophilic compounds. There are 4 classes, your cytosolic glutathione S-transferase and 2 classes of your microsomal membrane-bound enzymes. They are found in your mitochondria and your peroxisomes. There are 7 different types of your subunits of your homo or heterodimers, and there are different subunits that are induced to different xenobiotics bind. So your glutathione provides a reductant plant for the reduction of potentially toxic hydrogen peroxide to water in the reaction catalyzed by the glutathione peroxidase. So intracellular reductant and antioxidant is the key role of your glutathione. So they involve your GSH as a carrier that has been implicated in the transport of some of your amino acids across the membranes of your kidney. Other reactions will involve your acetylation. So acetyl donor, your polymorphisms, they result in individuals who are classified as slow or fast acetylators. They have toxic effects also. For example, your isoniazid, because the drug will persist longer in this people. Age, gender, and other factors also affect your xenobiotic metabolisms. So toxicity or carcinogenicity are found out to be present in experimental animal to human beings or to another animal species, mainly because of their genetic factors. They vary with age and gender, enzyme induction, and some inhibit or stimulate activities of your enzymes. There are also diseases that are affecting all of these activities in your drug metabolizing enzymes. Is your aircon sira? What are the responses to xenobiotics that are important to know? So mostly these will be your pharmacological, toxic, immunological, and carcinogenic effects. So very few of your xenobiotics that includes your drugs do not have toxic effects if the dose is large enough. So toxic effects will cover a wide spectrum, but most often these are considered under three general headings. One would be your covalent bonding of your metabolites to macromolecules that includes your DNA, RNA, and your protein. You call this cytotoxicity, or that causes cell injury. Some may be severe enough to result in cell death. So, for example, if there is a damage to your DNA and your DNA repair mechanisms are activated. Number two would be reactive metabolites of your xenobiotics that may bind to your protein and act as your hapten. So they alter your antigenicity and they do not stimulate antibody production. And lastly, the reaction of your activated protein, but also with unmodified protein. So they potentially eliminate the autoimmune disease. So these species produce chemical carcinogens with DNA which are thought to be of great importance in chemical. Okay, so we'll now proceed with your next chapter. Your last chapter will be on your biochemistry of aging. So we'll discuss on lifespan versus longevity. So Paleolithic times through Greece, Golden Age to medieval times, the average life expectancy of a newborn remained relatively constant. So this oscillates between the age 25 to 35 years old. At the start of your Renaissance, it gradually increased, beginning of your 20th century. So persons born in developing countries reached mid-40s. So today, 100 years later, the current world average is 67 years old. And for developed nations is approaching 80 years old. This led to the speculation that the popular press would regard how long this trend might be expected to continue. So can our future generations expect to live past the century mark? It's possible that human beings will possess the potential, bearing accidents and with proper care and maintenance, to live indefinitely. Unfortunately, it's unlikely to be realized because this is based on the misunderstanding of the term of life expectancy. Life expectancy is calculated by averaging overall births, so that's dramatically influenced by infant mortality rates. So the life expectancy of a Roman child was 25 years old if calculated. The expected lifespan only for those persons who survived in infancy will refer to as longevity. So the average nearly doubled to 48 when one factors out the dramatic decline in infant mortality, which has taken over the past century and a half. So predicted longevity of a 5-year-old child in the United States has increased from 70.5 in 1950 to 77.5 years in the year 2000. Your aging and mortality is a non-specific or programmed process. So, our aging and death, non-determinate or stochastic process in which living creatures reach a tipping point where they succumb to life's accumulation of damage from disease, injury, or simple wear and tear. So the human body has a certain capacity to repair and replace at the molecular and cellular levels, so this capacity is yet variable and finite. So no matter how much attention you devote to care and maintenance, like automobiles and other sophisticated mechanical devices, sooner or later some of your components of your bodies will wear out. So there were alternative schools of thoughts that posits that aging and death are genetically programmed processes analogous to puberty, which the process we think of or we believe is a natural selection. So aging and death is a multifactorial process to which numerous factors, some non-determined and others programmed. So while work remains to be done before the precise makeup is determined, the potential contributors have to be identified. There are theories regarding aging and mortality that has hypothesized that human body eventually succumbs to accumulation of damage over time. So these theories note that while repair and turnover mechanisms exist to restore and replace, many of the damaged molecules are less than perfect. So some damage will leak through damage, will accumulate over time, and particularly your long-lived cell populations will experience little turnover. Water is a relatively weak liquefier, so it will react on any susceptible targets inside the cells, which leads to cleavage of your polypeptide chain. Your hydrolysis will then lead to replacement of your amide group with your acidic carboxylic group to form your aspartate and your glutamate. Your chemically modified protein is replaced and degraded into a newly synthesized protein, while amino acids projecting from any of your rings are susceptible to hydrolytic attack. So the result of this is going to be mutation, and if they go unprepared, they perturb gene expression or generate a dysfunctional gene product. So water in itself already has the potential to create that dysfunctional gene product. So your bond between the nucleotide base and your deoxyribose moiety in your DNA becomes also vulnerable to your hydrolysis. So if completely eliminated, the base leaves a gap in the sequence, and if they go unprepared again, they either lead to substitution or a frame shift mutation. So there are different processes that require enzyme-catalyzed oxidation of your organic molecules. Some with molecular oxygen, and this process will include your hydroxylation of your proline and your lysine side chain, your detoxification of your xenobiotics by your CP450, your purine nucleotides, your uric acid, your oxidation of your prosthetic groups into your flavin-containing enzymes, and lastly, the generation of your quinosemol gradient in the mitochondria to your ETC. So what are your ROS and why are they chemically prolific? So these are high reactivity of your ROS that make them extremely dangerous. So they virtually can alter any organic compound and can cleave any covalent bonds. So the strong tendency for them to adopt a term refers to the product form where two compounds combine together any of your nucleotide bases, your fatty acids, and other biological compounds to possess multiple double bonds. So peroxidation, specifically your lipid bonds, can lead to the formation of your cross-linked lipid-lipid or lipid-protein adducts and the loss of your membrane fluidity and integrity. So the loss of the membrane integrity can cause mitochondria, undermine the efficiency, which the ETC converts, reducing equivalence to your ATP. So this can have accumulation of your deleterious ROS. So if there's going to be loss of your mitochondrial membrane integrity, that also triggers your apoptosis, which is your programmed cell death. Any reactions, or there are a series of reactions that will multiply the destructiveness of your ROS. So they participate in these reactions between the free radical and some of your biomolecule, and they contain a highly reactive unpaired electron. So that chain will terminate a free radical to acquire another electron to form a relatively electron pair without generating a new unpaired electron as a byproduct. Remember, in your ETC there has to be pairing. So the two odd electrons will combine to form a pair. So hydroxyl radical is generated when your superoxide and your hydrogen peroxide disproportionate, and they call this your Haber-Well's reaction. So in 1956, Stella Harmon proposed the so-called free radical theory of aging. It has been reported that toxicity of your hyperbaric oxygen treatment and radiation can be explained by the factor common to both, and that is your generation of your ROS. So the lifespan was inversely related to metabolic rate and by extrapolation, respiration. So damage was caused by continuous and inescapable production of your ROS. So this gave focus to the attention of the mitochondria that was affected by your free radical theory of aging. Any oxidative damage to the components of that pathway has increased the leakage of your hydrogen peroxide, your superoxide, and many others into your cytoplasm. So this brought an adverse effect in the efficiency where it performs the most important function, and that is your synthesis of your ATP. So there were several components of your ETC that are encoded by your mitochondria's indigenous gene. Mitochondria gets affected highly, and these are your key participants in an apoptosis. So higher organisms has the ability to selectively eliminate your cells through developmental changes, and they take control, or they take place in continual basis, especially at the start of your embryogenesis, or that has been damaged beyond repair. So your developmental tissue remodeling, your apoptotic cell death, this can be triggered by receptor-mediated signals. And any of these indicators will serve as your trigger. So your ROS, your viral sRNA, your DNA damage, and your heat shock. So this signals induces the opening of your transition to core complex embedded in the mitochondrial outer membrane. So the term UV radiation refers to those wavelengths of light that goes beyond the blue or short wavelength of the visible spectrum. So these are absorbed by organic compounds that possesses aromatic rings or multiple bonds. They have double bonds, such as your nucleotide bases of your DNA and your RNA. So the absorption of short wavelength, high energy light will cause the rupture of your covalent bonds in your proteins, DNA, and your RNA. Cross-linking of your proteins, the generation of your free radicals will include your ROS. So any prolonged exposure of this can lead to accumulation of your multiple DNA regions that can create a cell's intrinsic repair capacity overwhelmed. Your glycation often leads to formation of your damaging cross-links. So there are a series of rearrangements from your amadori to form your amadori products that contains your carbon-carbon double bond and reacts with your amino group on the neighboring protein. So the net result will be a cross-link between two proteins or other macromolecules that will undergo further glycation and cross-link to yet another macromolecule. We call this your advanced glycation in the products or your agents. So this provides the opportunity for multiple glycation and cross-linking events to occur. There's going to be a progressive loss of your elasticity and thickening of your basement membrane in your blood vessels, and this will promote your plaque formation. Overall, this increases the heart's workload. What are the mechanisms that combat wear and tear? Enzymatic and chemical mechanisms, those that can intercept the damaging ROS. Longevity reflects effectiveness and robustness of your molecular prevention, repair, and replacement any given species and the individuals within. So your superoxide dismutase, your catalase, they protect the cell by converting your superoxide and hydrogen peroxide to less reactive products. Oxidized glutathione that consists of two tripeptides linked by an SS bond is enzymatically able to reduce the pool of and maintain that pull or protect that. So your glutathione not only presumably widens the person, but it actually protects the body from your ROS. So glutathione can also react directly with sustained sulfuric acids, and they restore them to reduce states and form adduct toxic xenobiotics. So ascorbic acid, vitamin E, also possesses antioxidant properties. Maybe that's why commercially they are available as your antioxidants. And a lot of women choose to purchase such because they're going for whitening effects, beautification effect, but it's actually going to reduce the damage that ROS brings into the body. They account for the fact that many popular diets target foods rich in these compounds with an effort to buttress the body's ability to neutralize ROS and slowly age. Okay. How are your DNA integrity maintained and proofread and repaired? So, your living organisms has the capacity to replace or repair damaged macromolecules, but it's quite limited. So the integrity of the nuclear, they have to maintain the integrity of the nuclear, integrity of the genome, living organisms that possesses the enzymes whose role is to inspect and correct aberrations, and those cells that harbor damaging mutations are subject to removal by your apoptosis. There are some types of your protein damage that can be repaired. So in contrast to your DNA, the cell's capacity to repair damage and other biomolecules are relatively limited. For the most part, the cells appear to rely on routine turnover, wherein the global population of a given molecule is degraded and replaced by new synthesis on a continuing or constitutive basis. While other proteins, like your fibrous proteins, they contribute to the structural integrity of your tendons, ligaments, bones, matrices, and other little, if any, turnover. There are long-lived proteins that tend to accumulate damage over the years, and they contribute to the loss of your elasticity, of your vascular tissues, joints, loss of lens opacity. The most prominent mechanisms of repair target the side-chain sulfur atoms of your cysteine and your methionine, and your isospartyl groups that forms your peptide bond shifts from the alpha to the side-chain carboxyl. Okay. There are disulfide reductases and methionine sulfide reductases that provides an enzyme catalyzed reduction mechanism that uses your NADPH as your electron donor. Unfortunately, this reduction potential of your glutathione and your NADPH is only sufficient to reduce the lowest oxidation states of your sulfur atoms. Aggregated proteins, they melt highly refractory to degradation or repair. So modifications of your protein's composition adhere to other protein molecules and lead to formation of your toxic aggregates or your alloy. Any toxic effects of these aggregates, when are exacerbated, as in this state, most are generally refractory to the action of the proteases and are responsible for this turnover. Aging is a pre-programmed process. So what are the metabolic theories of aging? The brighter the candle, the quicker it burns. There are many variants of your famous quote attributed to ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, which summarizes the salient features of your metabolic theories of aging, one of which is the causal basis of this connection within the size rather than the size itself, where scientists focus its attention on the organ most frequently associated with life and the vitality, which is the heart. So heartbeat hypothesis posited that every living creature is capable of performing only a finite number of heartbeats or breaths. So the most nuanced variation of this basic idea refers to metabolic or rate of living hypothesis, which was forwarded by Raymond Pearl in the 1920s. Raymond Pearl proposed that the individual's lifespan was appealing. Identification of the mechanistic link between lifespan, expenditure, and metabolic rate was proven elusive. Cells experiencing caloric deficits adjust or they reprogram their metabolic pathways to utilize available resources in a more efficient manner that concomitantly decreases the field of collateral ROS. So that is our last slide. I'm going to throw in practice questions for Tuesday. It is the enzyme responsible for the acetylation of your xenobiotics. A. UDP glucuryl transferase. B. COMT. B. COMT. C. N-acetyltransferase. D. glutathione S transferase. A. UDP glucuryl transferase. B. COMT or your cathepol-O mental transferase. C. N-acetyltransferase. D. glutathione S transferase. Which phase 1 reaction involves the introduction of the hydroxyl group OH into the xenobiotic molecule? Which phase 1 reaction involves the introduction of the hydroxyl group OH into the xenobiotic molecule? A. Conjugation. B. Hydrolysis. C. Reduction. D. Oxidation. A. Conjugation. B. Hydrolysis. C. Reduction. D. Oxidation. Conjugation. Hydrolysis. Reduction. Oxidation. The accumulation of which of the following biomolecules is implicated in the aging process? A. Lipids. B. Carbohydrates. C. Proteins. D. All of the above. The accumulation of which of the following biomolecules is implicated in the aging process? A. Lipids. B. Carbohydrates. C. Proteins. D. All of the above. Who says lipids? Who says carbohydrates? Proteins? All of the above. Kung bibili ka Tuesday. Again, go back to the first question. What is the enzyme responsible for the acetylation of your xenobiotics? That's your N-acetyltransferase. The phase 1 reaction is the introduction of the hydroxyl group. Oxidation. Which of the following organelles play a central role in regulating cellular senescence and aging? Which of the following organelles plays a central role in regulating cellular senescence and aging? A. Lysosomes, B. Mitochondria, C. Golgi apparatus, D. Endoplasmic reticulum. Who says lysosomes? Mitochondria. Golgi apparatus. Endoplasmic reticulum. No show of hands. I will change my test questions now. Okay. The correct answer is mitochondria. I've been repeating mitochondria from the very first slide. I did not mention lysosomes. Diba? Pathways involved in the mitochondria, ETC, so it involves oxygen. So ROS only acts on oxygen. Which of the following is a potential consequence of age-related changes in the extracellular matrix? A potential consequence of age-related changes in the extracellular matrix. 1. A. Decreased risk of fibrosis. B. Impaired tissue regeneration. C. Enhanced wound healing. D. Increased elasticity. Which of the following is a potential consequence of age-related changes in the extracellular matrix? A. Decreased risk of fibrosis. B. Impaired tissue regeneration. C. Enhanced wound healing. D. Increased elasticity. Boy? No. So that's your impaired tissue regeneration. Caloric restriction has been shown to extend lifespan in various organisms, primarily by A. Inhibiting DNA repair mechanisms. B. Suppressing autophagy. C. Reducing oxidative stress. D. Increasing metabolic rate. Caloric restriction has been shown to extend lifespan in various organisms, primarily by A. Inhibiting DNA repair mechanisms. B. Suppressing autophagy. C. Reducing the oxidative stress. D. Increasing metabolic rate. What is it? Oxidative stress. That's all. I'll send the slides later.